Hello, Brubs. We're back with Heinz Ewers' The Sorcerer's Apprentice, a 1927 translation from Ludwig Levinson, I believe. And we are on chapter 4. I'm reading the digital version since this is a bit fragile, as you can see. But so far, a very interesting book. And that's very interesting as well. The demon in there. All right, chapter 4. Here we go again with these. O Dal tu Traumite, Alma devise, Beningo Latana. I don't know how to say any of those words, but it's a hymn to Satan by G. Carducci. Teresa knelt on a little confessional footstool. Her forehead lay in her folded hands. Her eyes were shut tight. She did not see the old priest, who sat in his armchair before her, and she was telling him. Her words came without a pause, without resonance, in a quiet, steady, calm flow, patiently without interrupting her. The old man listened. His eyes wandered about the walls of his room and clung finally to a small gold framed picture which represented, clumsily but colorfully enough, his native Val d'Escodra. He saw Round Lake deep in the valley and saw the brown roofs that clung to the green of the slope like patches of rusty moss. He sighed. How long ago it was since he climbed about there with his yellow goat, and there this German had now settled down, this German whom he himself had sent thither, and who now had taken his poor little penitent, and Teresa fell asleep. Slowly she raised her head, looked at him helplessly, deeply questioning. The old man saw her eyes, so large and blue, gleam under her lashes. Was she not a German too? He thought of her mother, a teacher's child, one of 17. She was probably happy enough when Raymonde, a sergeant major of the Imperial Hunters, asked for her hand. But then, immediately after their marriage, his parents died. He asked for his discharge and moved with his young wife to Val di Scodra. Was it not truly a grave into which he brought her? She was alone, had not a soul with whom she could really communicate, not one. It had not been the language, however, which cut her off from the folk of the valley. She learned that rapidly enough. It was only her bit of education, tiny as it was, which nevertheless separated her so thoroughly from these mere beasts of the mountains, made her appear a stranger, an interloper, whom all hated. Nothing remained to help her but her little daughter Teresa. To her she dedicated 14 years of life, a life passed quietly, humbly, in constant melancholy yearning that no longer knew hope. She lost her bloom swiftly and faded, and that which died after many years was but a pitiable shadow of the beautiful Mary of Brixen. The minutes passed. He did not answer his penitent. He knew not what to say. Wherein consisted the girl's sin? To be sure, certainly it was a sin. But what sin? Where did it arise, and how was he to grasp it? Again her lips moved. With infinite softness the words came. He scarcely heard them, read them rather upon her lips. Your reverence, is it true? Did the Madonna send him? He was frightened. A little sweat came upon his forehead, and he brooded again. Wherein does her sin consist? Then, swiftly and without apparent motivation, he put a question. Does he often go to the American? No, said the girl. The priest was astonished. No, he repeated. Has he never been there? Oh, yes, she answered. Tell me everything you know about him, he demanded. She spoke in her docile way. He went there once in the evening, exactly at 7 o'clock. He entered the hall. I know it precisely. I saw him go in, for I happened to be standing by the window and looking out. She turned red and interrupted herself. No, your reverence, no, forgive me, it didn't just happen. When he goes out, something drives me to my room and to the window. I stand there and look after him. I watch to see whither he goes, how he wanders now here and now there in the valley. Her head drooped, her eyes remained dry, but her voice was full of tears. Go on, the priest urged her. Teresa said, he was there scarcely an hour, then he came back for supper. He told father where he had been, and he said that they were all blockheads, these devil hunters, and that father and Angelo, our man, were the only sensible people in the village because they did not join in this mischief. That is all. The old man drew a deep breath. He felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted from him, as though he had been liberated from a great fear. He did not know what he feared, but this dull oppression that had now tormented him for weeks. Suddenly it seemed gone. It seemed to him as though the evil that remained was but slight compared to the other, the unknown which he had escaped. And he did not know yet what he was to tell this girl. Seeking for that, he began to talk to her again and questioned her regarding all of the stranger's doings. Hello, Robs. Patiently she answered him. He works all day long and often late into the night. Then he goes for a walk. At times, too, he rows on the lake. The old man asked, does he go fishing? Then she said, no, he does not go fishing. He is kind to all animals, but he torments human beings. She stopped, but the priest beckoned her to continue. When he sees a caterpillar in the road, he picks it up and carries it into the grass, that no foot may crush it. He scolded me because I brushed the cobweb from his window, and with his own bread he feeds the hen and the doves. All our animals follow him. The big goat climbs the stairs and goes into his room, together with our tomcat. The old man smiled. He saw the face of the blond German, so young, so happy and laughing. He is only a big child, after all, he thought. The girl said, but he beats people. Once, when Angelo harnessed the mule, he saw that the straps were too tight and that the leather irritated the animal's sore skin. Then a rage came upon him. He tore the straps off and lashed them across the man's face. He did right, said the priest. The girl raised her eyes. This slight assent strengthened her, filled her with a happy and silent assurance. Then, doubting again, she let her head sink. And he struck me too, she murmured. You too? The priest asked swiftly. Yes, she said in a toneless voice. Otherwise, he does not heed me at all. Scarcely sees me, doesn't even know when I am present. But one morning, when he was at breakfast, I came into the guest room. I had caught a mouse in the trap. I took it out and threw it into the tomcat. Then he jumped up and struck me in the face. Then he forced the tomcat to release the mouse and let it escape. The old man asked, and what did you do? She looked at him in astonishment. I? Nothing. He cried out and scolded me. He said if there were mice about, the cat might catch as many as it chose. That was its business. And if I were to catch any in the trap, I might drown them or beat them to death, but I was not to torment animals needlessly. He asked me whether I understood, and since I gave no answer, he grasped my hands and pressed them together, so that I thought the bones would break. I was determined not to cry out, but I sank down on my knees before him. But he would not desist until I promised him never again to give a mouse to the cat. And have you kept the promise? Asked the old man. Yes, said the girl quietly. I had to swear it by the Madonna. She stopped again, seeking for words. After a while, she continued. Then he let me go, and I went out. But I heard how he talked to himself, as he often does, your reverence. And now he said something strange that I did not understand. And it was as though he said to me, although I was no longer in the room, he said softly, you may torture, but not needlessly. To torture as well, it is an art, perhaps the greatest of all, but men are like beasts of the field. They torture without knowing it. Thus he spoke. She fell silent. Her eyes sought an answer, but the old priest did not speak. Again he saw the stranger's face, but this time it had an immobile expression which fascinated and frightened him. She rose and approached him. What am I to do? She asked. But the old man shook his head. I do not know, he murmured. Then she threw herself on her knees at his feet and pillowed her head upon his lap. She sobbed, and he felt her tears moistening his robe. He wanted to help her and knew not how. Suddenly, or silently, he laid his hand upon her head and gently stroked her locks. Suddenly she arose and grasped his hand. Her breath flew, and he felt the passionate pressure of her fingers. Your Reverence, she cried, is it true? Did the Madonna send him? And in her eyes there gleamed her wish and her longing, and an ardent beseeching for his yes. He felt it clearly, and he saw in her eyes the stranger's third image, that of a youth, aglow with dreams, ready to scale all peaks. And he knew that this image filled her whole soul. Almost by force, the word she wanted seemed about to be wrung from his lips, but he mastered himself, turned his eyes away, and said, I do not know. He heard her deep sigh, and her pain stabbed him as though it were his own. Her fingers relaxed for a moment, only to cling to his own in a more convulsive grasp. Your Reverence, she stammered, your Reverence, or else. She broke off, but he understood her question well. What power had sent this stranger, the Madonna, or, and helplessly barren of counsel as the girl herself? He answered once again, I do not know. She broke down completely and fell across his knees. A sobbing came upon her and shook her poor body. It seemed to the priest as though she must break to pieces there at his feet. An infinite compassion came over him. He took her head and drew her up. Do you love him so much? He asked kindly. Then she breathed, Yes, Father, more than my life. He kissed her forehead gently. Then go, my child. Take your fate upon you. It is the hand of God. She looked at him gratefully, incapable of uttering a word. Then she covered his hands with tears and fervent kisses. Frank Braun came downstairs late. He had worked until dawn. He breakfasted then, lost in thought. Looked out at the window. Teresa served him. Silently she stood beside him, awaiting his look. But he scarcely saw her. He had not observed that she had been gone, and did not notice now that she had returned. He ate quickly and got up. That evening, and on the next day, she continued to stand beside him as he ate. She did not dare to address him, but served him silently as a slave. Once she said softly, I am to give you the priest's regards. He looked up. What priest? Don Vincenzo, she said. He nodded indifferently. Ah, yes, thank you. His thoughts were far away. Only after a while did the meaning of her words strike him. He looked at her and saw that she was beautiful. So you went to see your confessor? He asked. She did not lower her eyes, but answered his look. Yes, I was in the city 4 days ago. He asked, Did you confess? She nodded, then very softly. He said it was the hand of God. Frank Braun laughed. Is that so? Did he say that? He too. He tapped her lightly on the cheek and went out. He chatted with her now at times, but he did not touch her. He was friendly and kind to her, as to a comely lad whose presence he liked. Sometimes when he played his lute, he called her, then he let her sit by him and listen. Or he went into the boat and gave her the oars. She rowed and sat silently in front of him, thinking and dreaming there over the water. And he grew accustomed to having her run beside him on his walks, patiently and attentively as a well-trained dog. One evening, as they were sitting together in the boat, it occurred to him that she could speak German. The thought made him happy, for he felt the need of speaking to someone concerning his work. And since he thought in German, it was pleasanter to speak to her in that language rather than in her own, for then he was more conscious that she did not understand him. Now he told her everything he thought. He asked her advice, but at once supplied the answer himself. That helped him to see more clearly, more incisively, thus to speak aloud to her. Earnestly, patiently, for hours, Teresa listened to him. She understood little enough of all that he said, but his words seemed to her miraculous. She sat before him and was silent, happy, blessed in the feeling that her master was speaking to her. Frank Braun did not count the days. Spring departed, and summer lay in the valley. He saw that well. He went with the girl through the fields, and felt that there was something common between him and these people who tilled the land. Their hands scattered the seed, harrowed and plowed, creating all that was to grow. And thus his work grew too. He was cheerful and happy in the virile power of his creative activity, and on his soil let the fruits ripen in the sun. Sometimes by day, when the girl was in the garden or far out on the lake, he called to him the white goat or the tomcat. Neither had a name, but he had christened the goat Marfa and the tomcat Freddie. And the animals responded to these names, hastened up the stairs when he called, and thumped at the door. Then he let them into the room, sat down, and read to them. But the goat gave him no rest, pushed him gently, and sniffed at the pocket in which he carried sugar. Go on, Marfa, he said. You take no interest in ethnological problems. Or again, in the middle of the night, he went over to Teresa. He waked her up, sat down at the edge of the bed, and talked to her. She listened, as always, in earnest silence. Then he went away again. Sometimes, too, he stayed, and, laughing, took her in his arms, and she closed her eyes and trembled with happiness. After logical, okay, go ahead, but I don't know what the hell you're talking about. One evening, there was a knocking at his door. Angelo, the farmhand, stumbled in, gasping, bursting with an important message. Would the gentleman come down to the village to the house of Mariano Veneer? His wife, Matilda, was very ill and about to die, and would not the doctor come at once? I am not a physician, said Frank Braun, but the man did not budge. Frank Braun repeated that he had no skill in this art and could not help. Then Angelo shrugged his shoulders resignedly, as if to say, well, it's none of my business. He turned around and growled, I'm not from hereabouts. From below, Frank Braun heard loud and hurried talk. You get one more chance to redeem yourself, buddy, and then you're going... And then you're getting this. So stop saying stupid shit. Immediately thereafter, the landlord entered his room and Teresa with him. Ramonde said, Veneer is downstairs and refuses to go. Do go to his wife, sir. But what am I to do there? Cried the German. I tell you, I am not a physician. Ramonde nodded courteously. But you are a doctor, aren't you? He said. To be sure, exclaimed Frank Braun, but I am not a doctor of medicine. I can't help the woman, I tell you. The landlord nodded again, scratched his chin, and spat. Of course not, he agreed. But these people aren't going to believe it. They think because you are a doctor, you must be able to cure them. And his own aspect betrayed the fact that he himself shared their opinion thoroughly, and that it would vex him greatly if the strange doctor who lodged with him were not to go. He took a new start. Now the American has gone and is going to pray her well again. I'm sure you can do as much good as he. But Frank Braun did not feel the slightest ambition to compete with the American. No, he said, I have neither the time nor am I in the mood for such folly. Then the girl approached him. Do go to the poor woman, she begged. Perhaps you can help her, after all. He laughed, but child, I assure you that I can't do anything at all. She was quite serious and looked at him with her large eyes. Surely, she insisted, you can do anything. She grasped his arm. I beg of you to go to the poor woman. He sighed. Shrugging his shoulders, he opened the drawer and took out a few vials and pill boxes. Laudanum, quinine, pyramidon, just what he happened to have. Triumphantly, the landlord watched him and escorted him down the stairs. The doctor is coming, he called out to the peasant. The latter was a dirty, stunted, black-haired fellow with a low forehead and an incipient goiter. Hastily, he ran ahead. Frank Braun followed with his long strides. Veneer led him to his house, then through the hall into the bedroom. Many people were there, all praying aloud. He recognized the huge farmhand with the red goiter, and also Sibylla. the crooked old beggar of the road. So you have grown pious too, he thought. When he entered, they interrupted their singing. Swiftly he stepped to the bed. The air in the room was heavy to the point of suffocation. Open the window, he commanded. Veneer went to the window, but his wife sat up in bed. No, she cried, leave it closed. Pietro Nascler says that it must remain shut. Frank Braun turned to one side. Next to him stood the American. He was dressed in black, wore a long coat, which was closed tight at the neck, like the coat of a domestic missionary. His face was beardless, his eyes, which were small, penetrating, and lay deep in their hollows, squinted a little. His forehead was bulging, there was almost no chin, the nose seemed flattened out. In contrast, his large eyes, though grown tight by their lobes, protruded hugely on both sides. Old scrofulous scars ran across his neck. His movements were hasty, almost epileptic. Frank Braun thought, I could much more easily diagnose him than the sick woman. Let me take your pulse, he said, but the woman hid her arm under the bedclothes and looked at him, her eyes full of hatred. He turned to the peasant, glad of a reason for going. You see, your wife doesn't want me, he continued. How can I help then? At this point, the American said, Give him your hand, sister. Obediently, she lifted her arm. He felt her pulse and saw that she had a high fever. He asked for a candle in order to see better in the semi-darkness. Then he bade her open her mouth. Her tongue and her whole mouth were badly inflamed. She coughed and rattled. She is certainly ill, he thought. So much is certain. He had no idea what ailed her and considered what he was to do. How long since she slept, he asked hesitatingly. The American answered, 3 nights ago, and since yesterday we have been here praying with her. If Jesus is willing, he will heal our sister. All healing comes from the blood of the Lamb. Certainly, Frank Braun nodded. He reflected, it can do her no harm in any event to have a good sleep. I'll give her a little opium. Water, he cried. I will give her some medicine. The woman cried out and struggled with her hands. No, he wants to poison me. Then she began to sing aloud, and the whole company joined in. Sinner, the land of God, behold, on the cross, on the cross, on the cross, upon whose head our guilt was rolled. On the cross, on the cross, on the cross, his cry, O hear, his blood, O see, that looseneth our slavery. From Satan's bondage sets us free. On the cross, on the cross, on the cross. The peasant beckoned slightly with his head, and Frank Braun followed him into an outer chamber. Veneer took a water flask from a shelf. Go and send this, Mr. Peter, to me. Go and send this, Mr. Peter, to me, said Frank Braun. He filled 2 glasses half full of water and dropped some laudanum into each. Then the American came in. What do you want, doctor? He asked. Here is the medicine, said the German. I am going away now, and you must give it to the sick woman. Are you going to stay here all night? Yes, said Pietro Nascler. We shall watch and pray. Very well, then, Frank Braun continued. Give her the contents of the 1 glass at once. She will take the medicine more willingly from you. It is to be hoped that she will feel quieter then and soon fall asleep. If she wakes up again, give her the contents of the other glass. Do you understand? Peter nodded. But will you really do it? Said the other. The American did not answer. But it was easy to see his intention, namely to take the glasses and pour out their contents so soon as the other had turned his back. Frank Braun was vexed. He grasped Pietro's shoulders and shook him. Look at me, he commanded. You will do what I tell you. I insist. Do you understand? The American murmured. Yes, I will do it. He took the glasses and went back into the sick room. On the following day, Frank Braun met the peasant in front of his house. Well, how was your wife today? He asked. Mariano Veneer answered distrustfully. You didn't help her. I won't pay anything. I didn't ask for anything, said the German, and I don't want any money. I'd simply like to know how the patient is. Veneer grew more polite. She is better, sir. She will probably get well. I thank you for having come. Swiftly, he added, but it's the American who saved her. Then he turned around and hurried into his house. The village was agog over the healing of Matilda Veneer. People said that she had been irretrievably lost and that even the skill of the famous German physician had been in vain. Mr. Peter had watched and prayed with her for 3 nights and saved her body, which had already been in the very claws of Satan. Teresa came into his room. It was you who saved Matilda, wasn't it, and not the American? Frank Braun thought, I dare say she saved herself, but he said it was probably the American. He prayed so nicely. The girl did not know whether he spoke seriously. No, no, she insisted. Oh, yes, yes, he interrupted her. I told you that I was no physician. Come in, he cried as he heard a gentle knocking at the door. The girl opened the door, but when she saw Pietro, she was frightened and ran out quickly. The American approached. Frank Braun bade him good day and offered him a chair. In his embarrassment, Mr. Peter rubbed his large gray hands over his knees. Then he began stammeringly and said that he had come to express his gratitude for the healing of his sister. The people in the village, it is true, said that he himself had saved Venier's wife because no one had seen the doctor give him the medicine for her. He himself, however, knew better. I suppose you have explained it to the people, Frank Braun asked. No, said Mr. Peter, not yet, but I will do it Sunday afternoon at the meeting. I will proclaim then that it was not I, but the German physician, who saved our sister. Frank Braun looked at him. You will not do that, he said quietly. And why not? Pietro moved about on his chair uneasily. Why not? I must tell it. It is the truth, and one should always honor the truth. You will not say it. I shall come and watch you, and if you say it, I shall get up and explain to all that you are lying. The American jumped up from his chair, but Frank Braun took him by the arm and pushed him back again. Keep your seat, he went on. You are to understand me. It was not I who healed the wife of Mariano Venier. It was you. Pietro grasped his head with both hands. I, he stammered. I? But it was you who gave the medicine. Frank Braun lied. No, I gave her clear water. I am no physician. I can heal no one. Yet you alone healed the sick woman, you and your prayer. It is you that Jesus gives the power of his grace, not to me. Pietro turned his hat in his hands. He brooded pitifully. Thoughts defined themselves very slowly in his brain. Frank Braun repeated all that he had said once more and with emphasis. Then only did the man grasping his meaning. Then only did the man grasp his meaning. He arose, his eyes glowed. Doctor, he asked, is that really true? Frank Braun took the outstretched hand and shook it heartily. Yes, that is really true. And he thought, why shouldn't I lie, if it gives him so much pleasure? A strange delight tickled him as he regarded the American. The latter's chest heaved. He stretched his narrow shoulders. It seemed as though he were growing, moment by moment. He stretched out his hand, half opened his lips as though he were about to address his congregation. Frank Braun thought, you ought to be grateful to me, old boy. It is only now that you are beginning to believe in yourself. He led him to the door. The American walked falteringly, uncertainly, almost as one intoxicated. On his thin, bloodless lips lay a proud, triumphant smile, but it vanished the moment he looked at the other and became conscious of his existence. He did not doubt himself, but with this great faith in himself, he gained yet another faith. That, namely, in the superior power of the stranger. Humbly he said, I thank you, doctor. Frank Braun answered, you have nothing to thank me for. Some day soon I am coming to one of your meetings. He waved his hand. Farewell, Elijah. Pietro opened the door and bowed. Suddenly he stopped and asked, stammering, Sir, why do you call me Elijah? Frank Braun thought, you repulsive fool, don't you really feel yourself to be a prophet? And he said, go now, I will tell you another time. Scarcely had Pietro left the house when Teresa re-entered the room. She seemed excited, her cheeks burned. Breathlessly she asked, what did he say? What did he come? Why did he come? Frank Braun answered, how does it concern you? He came to me and not to you. But she trembled and gasped. God, I can't read. But she trembled and gasped, I don't want him to come here. He shan't come. She came close to him and grasped his arm. He looked at her sharply, and she trembled and was cowed. Gently, as though excusing herself, she said, "He has the evil eye." Frank Braun drew her to him and placed her lightly on his knee. She wanted to speak, but he motioned her to be silent. He pressed her head against his shoulder, and then swiftly he passed his hands over her temples. She did not resist, but lay quietly breathing against his breast. He held her with his left hand, while with his right hand he made soothing passes. He observed her closely, his glance melted into hers. Then suddenly the gentle twitching of her lids ceased. The conjunctiva became slightly inflamed. The eyes stood wide open. He nodded in satisfaction. He put her on her feet. She remained standing on the spot. He arose, took her arm, her hand. All her limbs showed great flexibility, went automatically through such gestures as he desired, or remained stiff in the position which he gave them. Large tears rolled from the eyes of the cataleptic girl. With some violence he drove a needle into her arm. His face showed no expression of pain. That sufficed him. He had little desire for repeated experiments. Swiftly he closed both of her eyelids with his finger. Her eyes opened and then closed again, opened once more and finally remained half open. The eyeballs were convulsively turned upward. The lids were fluttering with vibrant motion. Her head hung far down over her bosom. A subdued, sobbing noise issued from her glottis. He raised her arm. It fell back like lead. He took her elbow, sought the nerve center, and pressed heavily on it. Immediately, the muscles which this nerve served contracted violently, her hand assuming a claw-like form. "Lethargy," he murmured. "Go ahead, my child. It is not well to have a will of one's own." He pressed her back into the chair, sat down on the table in front of her, and lit a cigarette. He looked at her, smoked, and thought deeply. "How strange it is," he thought. "Doesn't it look as though I were the sorcerer? And yet I know very well that it is not I who have the power, but you, my child. And if ever I were to accomplish anything either with that fool, that American, whom you dislike, or with yourself, it will always be your power or his that brings it about, and not mine. I can think, but you people can act. Science asserts that you are both ill and therefore pitiable, and science is probably right. It would heal you. It would heal you if it can. But I am no physician. I would not heal you. Your disease is a source of power which I will use if I can." He sighed and threw the cigarette out of the open window. "That is to say," he continued, "if I feel like it. Who knows whether either one of you will interest me tomorrow? Perhaps it's not worth one's trouble to make such puppets dance. Who can tell? Perhaps you're only stupid, commonplace, hysterical fodder for the clinics of curious physicians. For look, you, my child, on that stage where I am master, there is no room for the trivial. The actions must be tragic and fatal and significant." He pointed with his finger through the window to the village and the lake. "Look yonder, little puppet," he cried. "There is your stage. Would you dance? A fine dance together with your Mr. Peter. The whole village would be your chorus." He laughed aloud. "Ah, it would become a fine play, for I am no physician, thank heaven. I am a charlatan, but only a charlatan can work miracles." He fell silent and went up to her. "Come, my child," he said. "We'll go one step further." He laid his right hand on her head, stroked it with his index finger, and thus created a gentle irritation. After a few moments, her eyes were entirely closed. She drew a deep breath, and her lethargy vanished, more as a matter of habit than to convince himself of the appearance of the third phase of her sleep. He made several experiments. He ascertained the fact that by means of a gentle irritation of the skin, the muscles of the somnambulist contracted and relaxed again just as easily through the same motion. He addressed her, gave her a few commands. She answered softly and immediately executed whatever he desired. But this ceased to amuse him, and he thought of waking her up again, and quite superficially, without any real faith in its success, he made a further experiment. How many more pages? Lots. 4. He commanded her to open her eyes wide, and suddenly, without any transition, he put his face quite close to hers, gazing at her straight and penetratingly. Her cheeks flushed, all her blood rose to her head. The pupils were remarkably distended. He grasped her hand without lowering his gaze and took her pulse. 125 beats, and now she clung. She clove to his glance. He walked backward. The girl followed him, her head stretched forward, her shoulders drawn up, her arms hanging limp beside her body. Her face seemed strangely empty, her features immobile. Her eyes were fixed, not a fiber of her body quivered, not a word issued from the harshly closed lips. Her expression was stony, and but one thought arose in her brain, not to lose this gleaming point, his eyes, though it were to cost the world. And herein lay the success of the experiment. The girl knew what was happening to her. Her consciousness was excessively clear. The smallest movement was stamped upon her brain. He strode up to her, pinched her arm, took a sharp knife from the table, pricked her twice and thrice so that the clear blood flowed. She saw it and knew what he was doing, but she felt no pain, and it was not unpleasant to her. She felt not even fear. Immovable, fixed, she hung upon his eyes as a little bird upon the eyes of a snake. Frank Braun still held her with his eyes, but now his expression became happy. Quietly smiling, a great joy, like an exquisite warmth, seemed to arise in him. The trance, he murmured. Oh, the girl is splendid, splendid. He took her head in his arms and blew gently on her eyes. She awakened at once. The fixed expression was lost. All her mobility returned. She seemed astonished and confused, but not fearful. What did you do with me? She asked. He answered, You know. Then he lifted her arm and kissed away the blood from the wounds. Did it hurt? He asked. She smiled. No, not at all. But why did you do it? Why? He laughed. Why, I don't know. And if I knew and were to tell you, you would not understand it anyhow. May I do anything I please with you? She kissed both of his hands. Surely, she said, you may do anything that you desire. He thought, how touching, with your kind permission and your father's confessor. Well, I didn't get your permission this time until after the feast. But aloud he said, Thank you. It's very dear of you. Some day, soon, we will go to one of the Americans' meetings. She lowered her eyes and made no answer. Her bosom rose and fell, and he saw how she struggled. Finally, she said quietly, Yes. You still have a trace of will left, haven't you? He asked softly. Come here, my child. He drew her to him and passed his hand lightly over her head and face, her shoulders, arms, and breast. Here and there he stroked her gently, seeking a spot highly sensitive to hypnotic stimulation. Finally, he found one at the base of the cushion of her left thumb. He pressed the spot lightly. The girl at once fell asleep. But immediately he blew upon her and awakened her again. Now she is my slave, he thought. Listen, I'm terribly hungry, he said. Aren't we going to have anything to eat this evening? Of course we are, she cried. I'll hurry to the kitchen right away. Everything will be ready in a moment. Hurry then, he said, and we'll take the boat and go out on the lake. You are to row, and I will tell you stories. Do you want to? She fell upon his neck. Do I want to? He kissed her gently, but I'm not going to tell you all that confusing stuff about my work. I'll tell you a real fairy tale. And the girl cried out in her joy, Yes, yes, a fairy tale, a fairy tale. He stepped to the window and saw her hurrying to the garden to pick strawberries. Then a boy came running up to her and brought her in both hands great bunches of white currant twigs. He recognized him. It was the small boy whom he had seen on that first day when he had arrived in the valley. He beckoned to him and asked, What's your name? Teresa looked up. He doesn't understand, she said. His name is Gino. He is deaf and dumb. She stroked his cheek and made signs to him with her fingers. Then the boy looked up at the window, blushed, bowed in awkward embarrassment. Frank Braun asked, "Is he your protege?" The girl nodded. "Yes, he is. He is a parish child and has neither father nor mother. No one pays any attention to him." Again she made signs to him with her hands. His emaciated face beamed and he ran quickly to the kitchen. The German descended the stairs. He threw a glance into the kitchen. There lay the little fellow on the floor beside the hearth and the kindling wood. The farmhand entered, took a heavy basket from his shoulders, and threw the heavy wood from it on the floor. Marfa, the goat, followed him. "Hey, Angelo," Frank Braun called out to him. "How is Venier's wife?" The fellow stood still and pulled his shoulders up. A broad, imbecile grin settled down, as always, over his face. Frank Braun saw this stupid laugh. Wasn't it possible just once to throw out of gear this eternal, dull equanimity? A mood of childlike wantonness overcame him. He leaped down the stone steps and turned somersaults in front of the house like a maddened top. Then he pulled the grinning fellow out of doors, stood him up, and jumped over him. Finally, he stood on his head, ran up and down on his hands, and sang and roared like one possessed. Teresa came back from the garden with a basket of strawberries in her hand. For a moment she stared in astonishment at his wild activity. Then she cried out with delight and sat down laughing on the stone bench. The boy Gino looked out of the door. His black eyes sparkled. He clapped his hands for joy. But the farmhand stood speechless and stupid as a huge block of wood and didn't move. Frank Braun sprang to his feet and turned a mighty somersault that landed him close to Angelo. "Well, Angelo," he cried, "don't you like that?" The man grinned sheepishly. "Sir," he stammered, "I'm not from hereabouts." And there's the end of chapter 4. And that's the end of this